6-24 win over the Saints on Sunday, while the Buccaneers pounded the Eagles 33-16. Baseball wild card on Tuesday, Game 1, the Tigers beat the Astros 3-1. The Royals shut out the Orioles 1-0. The Mets doubled up the Brewers 8-4. The Padres shut out the Braves 4-0. Game 2 today, the Guardians take on the Astros Tigers winner. The Phillies await the Brewers or the Mets. The Yankees face the Baltimore Kansas City winner, while the Padres or Braves will take on the Dodgers.
Bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
Lowe's knows it's easier to make the right calls when you have the right team. That's why our Lowe's Red Vest associates can help with game time decisions. Plus, use in-store mode on the Lowe's app to find what you need. Under pressure at home and want it soon? Order online by 2 p.m. to get it same day. Same day valid on eligible in-stock items and select zip codes only, subject to driver availability. Fees vary based on purchase. Exclusions and more terms apply. See Lowe's.com/same-day delivery for details.
Progressive presents good news, bad news, dumb news, then great news. Good news. While leaning over the fence, your neighbor said you could save money bundling home and auto insurance with Progressive. Bad news. Your neighbor leaned over a little too much and broke your fence. Dumb news. Somehow fence wood is more expensive than wood. Great news. You decide to see if you could save money bundling at Progressive.com and to plant really tall shrubs. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates and other insurers not available in all states.
No way football is playing in the fall and winter
because the hits don't hurt as much when you're numb. Get the lowdown on all the sports action coming up right here.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
The only place in football where the offense is always on the field is on Moneyline. With the two best hosts in radio, Donnie Rightside.
If anybody wasn't watching, let's not know what you were doing.
And Kevin Walsh.
Forget act like you've been there before.
On the SportsGrid Radio Network, SiriusXM Channel 159.
Best hour every day now officially is underway. It's a hump day Wednesday. You know that. It's a solo mission for your boy Donnie Rightside here. SiriusXM Channel 159. So many different ways to watch and listen. SportsGrid on demand. Hit the subscribe button. Come on in the chat box. Watch us through YouTube. Say hello. The boys are popping already there. It's a fantastic new outlet. Obviously, you know, SportsGridRadio.com, SportsGrid.com, and as well as listening on the SportsGrid app, the best in the business. And by the way, did you know on the SportsGrid app that you can just say, you know what? Let me just follow my favorite on-air talent at SportsGrid. You can do that with individuals, and you can cash in tickets and have fun and watch it all the way through. Oh, as I had to sneeze right there. The cough buttons, by the way, one of the greatest inventions in the history of the sports business here. If you don't have one, if you're doing shows, you better get yourself one. Saves you a lot of time there of sneezing and yelling in the background and fixing things up. But that's how we get underway here on a Wednesday. And it is a solo mission. And the hot topics are going to continue to fly with none hotter than Major League Baseball's postseason. And it's a sprint. It really is. We watched on Monday two teams, the New York Mets and the Atlanta Braves, basically in a playoff scenario. Each one of those teams had to get a win to make the playoffs. They did that. Atlanta got the victory in game number 2, flew out to the West Coast. We'll get to that game in a minute. The New York Mets got the win in game number 1, champagne bottles. Didn't really care all that much against game number 2. I believe they got shut out in that game. They jump on the plane and go over to Milwaukee. And the reason that we say it's a sprint is the season ended for the Arizona Diamondbacks without playing an extra game because they did it to themselves. So you saw the split in the doubleheader, which was anticipated and heavily favored, and it happened. But now you saw yesterday, 4 games in play. 2 games in the afternoon, 1 game around dinner time, and 1 game a little bit later. You lose those games yesterday, just like the Astros, Orioles, Brewers, and Braves did. You wake up this morning, there is no tomorrow if you don't win today. And that's where the unbelievableness of a 162-game slate, and you can be bounced out in the matter of 36 hours in the playoffs because it's best of 3 in the wild card round. And I'm looking at some of these teams now and saying, like, ooh, you might be in trouble. Like, let's start with the early game yesterday. And by the way, before we get there, shout out to Commissioner of Baseball, Rob Manfred, the best commissioner in sports. And I don't care if you don't agree with me out here. I'm only talking about myself and my preferences. Every single thing Major League Baseball has done over the past 5 years has been spectacular. The rule change is fantastic. Nobody wanted pitchers to hit. We wanted more base stealing. We wanted ghost runners in extra innings so the game doesn't go 19 innings. You get the picture, right? But also, maybe even better, these playoff games. Like, let's take a look at the slate today. We're going to handicap these in just a moment. Game at 2:32, game at 4:38, game at 7:38, game at 8:38. Brilliance. Absolutely brilliance. You get games all throughout the afternoon, and then you get a game started right up around 7:30, which is fine. And the late game, which is the West Coast game, it's not even an East Coast game, the West Coast game, they tell the Padres fans, show up at your ballpark at 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and they'll do that. And everybody can watch. Everybody can sit back and partake in this. It's wonderful. Sure, they could have went like the NBA route, game at 1, game at 4, game at 7, game at 10, which basically told you nobody was going to watch Atlanta and San Diego. Now that it's 8:38 as a starting time, we can all comfortably watch Atlanta versus San Diego. So baseball, Rob Manfred, another absolute win for Major League Baseball fans. Now let's get to the games and what we saw yesterday. Tarek Skubal, I told, and again, I went over this on Moneyline today, and I've said it ad nauseum over the past week and a half. If the Detroit Tigers make the playoffs, they'll be in the wild card round. Absolutely in a short series, you don't want to see Tarek Skubal. Why? Because of games like yesterday. He's the best pitcher in baseball. He was filthy yesterday. 6 innings pitched, no earned runs. Outduels Framber Valdez, a very good pitcher in his own right, in his own ballpark with the better team. Detroit knocks out 10 hits in that game. Could have been worse. They weren't very good with runners in scoring position, but they did what they had to do. And watching that game get closed out, I was saying to myself, oh no, this team that leans so much on Tarek Skubal is now going to lose this because the bullpen can't close the door. You got to run in, runners on first and second, nobody out. And I love the sacrifice bunt to set up runners at third and second with 1 out, which meant the next 2 batters coming up, 1 base hit would tie that baseball game up, and the series would be blown out of the water because the Astros probably would end up winning it. And what could have been for the Tigers. But they won that game 3-1. Good for them. They're now in a closeout situation, but also the biggest underdog of the day. We'll handicap that in just a little bit. Kansas City and Baltimore yesterday. 1-0 finish. No offense whatsoever from the Baltimore Orioles. And it's a shame, too, because when you go out in the offseason and you try to set the table for an ace pitcher, hoping that once you got to the playoffs, your ace pitcher would perform. And that was Corbin Burns. And he performed yesterday. If you would have told me, and think about out there, guys, I got that crystal ball out and I was able to whisper in your ear in a meeting, psst, by the way, Corbin Burns is going to throw 8 innings and give up 1 earned run against the Royals today. You'd have opened up your phone app, FanDuel Sportsbook, DraftKings, Bet365, MGM, Caesars, whoever it is, and you would have fired away on a bet on the Baltimore Orioles, figuring that the Orioles probably could have gotten at least 2 runs in that ball game and won it. And they didn't, because Reagan's was spectacular also. 6 innings pitched, no earned runs, 8 strikeouts. Didn't even walk a batter. That is so crazy good. And also, Baltimore did it to themselves. Runners in scoring position, 1 of 7. Not good enough. And the fact that you said 1 of 7 is like, oh, at least they got 1 run in. No, they didn't. That base knock with a runner in scoring position didn't even equate to that. The only RBI in that game, Bobby Witt Jr. and his sensational season. But credit the Royals pitching. Wonderful starting pitching out of Cole Reagans. Long, Bubic, and Erceg came in behind him and shut the door on that talented Orioles lineup. So now this afternoon in Baltimore, their back is up against the wall. Must win or else they go home. So theoretically, you're telling me right now that the 5 and the 6 seed are going to handle their business on the road in the wild card round, which means the Astros would get knocked out and also the Baltimore Orioles, would be dancing in the streets at that point. Yeah, teams like the Cleveland Guardians and teams like the New York Yankees as they lie in the weeds waiting for those teams to play them in the ALDS. Now let's move forward also yesterday to some of those other games across the markets. The New York Metropolitans, boy, those Mets got it going on. They don't care where they play. They don't care if they're down runs. They're going to perform. They get down 2-0 right off the bat. You figured, Mets had that doubleheader yesterday, used a lot of energy, and now they're not ready to play in Milwaukee. Now, granted, sometimes you're running just off adrenaline, and they may have been doing that. But how about this? Milwaukee takes the 2-0 lead in the first inning. And then 3 runs the Mets strike for in the second inning. Then the bottom of the fourth inning, 2 runs by Milwaukee. Oh, man, we just can't get ahead of these guys. Boy, they're answering every call we have. And then 5 runs in the top of the 5th inning for the New York Mets, and nobody scored in the 6th, 7th, 8th, or 9th inning. But yet the Mets walk away with an over in the game, an over on their team total, and a lot of damage done. 2 RBI by Mark Vientos. Thought he would get one yesterday, and he did. Jesse Winker, 2 RBI, and also JD Martinez getting 2 RBI, and then Starling Marte folding in that final RBI. They were impressive yesterday. They're one of the hottest teams in baseball right now, no question about it. You're not supposed to win that game. Even though the Milwaukee Brewers don't have that front-end rotation that they had just a few short years ago, that's a game for Milwaukee you had to have because you knew the stress and strain that the Mets had just trying to go into the final day of the season in a doubleheader needing a win and got it. Then flying in when you're rested and ready didn't help them out. Braves and the Padres out on the West Coast last night. Michael King was phenomenal, people. An absolutely crazy pitching performance. You got a sleepy Braves team, and what did you do? You absolutely put them away with one of the more dominant pitching performances that you're going to see. 12 strikeouts. 12 for Mr. King. More baseball, more hot topics next. Keep the dial right here. It's the SportsGrid Network.
Fall is here.
It's getting cooler.
Football and the World Series are coming in.
Life is good.
SportsGrid makes it better. Get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Even as the South continues its recovery from the devastation of Hurricane Helene, another storm system is showing the potential for development in the Gulf of Mexico. With the SportsGrid News Flash, I'm Trey Westerberg. Early October is still not far from the last month's peak of the hurricane season. Most of the tropical systems in the Atlantic will stay away from the U.S., including Tropical Storm Kirk, but one system in the Caribbean could move into the Gulf by the end of the week. At this time, it's still too early to say how much it will develop and where it will hit. Oil prices climbed more than 3% on Tuesday in the immediate aftermath of an Iranian missile attack on Israel. The spike in prices is expected to push up the price of U.S. gas. Drivers could face a price increase of between 10 and 15 cents per gallon, according to experts. The national average price of a gallon of gas currently stands at $3.20. I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
Whether you own a local business or a global one, you know that these days, generating growth is a challenge. By teaming with Bank of America, you'll not just stay ahead of the curve, you'll move it. With access to experts, award-winning insights, and business solutions so powerful, you'll make every move matter, locally and globally. Visit bankofamerica.com/banking for business to learn more. What would you like the power to do? Copyright 2024 Bank of America N.A.
I can't wait for golf this weekend, huh, buddy? Time flies. Love you, man. Oh, don't forget your knee brace again. We aren't in college anymore.
Moments together matter, so help protect yourself from RSV. If you're 75 or older or 60 plus with a chronic condition like asthma, COPD, heart disease, or severe diabetes, you're at higher risk of landing in the hospital from RSV, and there are no prescription RSV treatments. Check eligibility and schedule your RSV vaccine at vaxassist.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
Days are getting cooler
and shadows are getting longer.
You know what that means. It's football weather. So bundle up and keep it here for all the latest strategies and gridiron information.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Major League Baseball is taking center stage today all across the network, and rightfully so. Love playoff baseball. It's awesome. And today you're going to have closeout games. Possibility of 4 teams going home today. Now, we hope that doesn't happen. From a betting perspective, you know, if you want to win your bet and the team goes home, so be it. From a fan perspective, we love drama. We love game number 3s. We love closeouts. We love game number 5s. We love game number 7s if that ends a series. So today, heaviest favorite on the board, -178 favorite for the Houston Astros, followed by the Baltimore Orioles with Zach Eflin on the mound at a -152 price. The other games basically pick 'em between Max Fried and Joe Musgrove in that Atlanta-San Diego game, and then you have Sean Manaea and Frankie Montas. Got some pretty good looks, by the way, in that Mets-Milwaukee game. We'll get to that just a little bit later. And also, guys, an update here. We're trying to work on the phones because as you watch this on YouTube, you do see that moniker that comes up. The phone lines are, available, and give us a call. It's happening on the way. We're working on it. The minute that goes live, would love to hear from the people once again. But the best way to reach out to the show right now, if you want to get a hold of the host, which is me and Kevin, and have some fun with us, you get on SportsGrid On Demand on YouTube. You see the video, it'll be playing, hit the live button. You can get in the chat box. You can say hello. You can reach out. You can share information with the chat box. That's what the design is. But also, we are a social media show as well. So on X, you want to reach out to me at RightSideVP. Always willing to take a look, even hashtag SG Moneyline, which we haven't used all that much. I still have that up on my computer. Another easy way to get through the show as well. Sharing information, winning bets, and having fun. That's what we do on the Sports Grid Network. Now, before we get back to Major League Baseball, you know what? It's time to talk the trade market in the NFL. It's time to talk Davante Adams. Talked ad nauseum this morning about where he might go, both myself and Dubs Anderson. But it is interesting here because here's the thought process now. Davante Adams, when he was headed to the Raiders, Josh McDaniels is going to be the head coach, right? Josh Jacobs as the running back. Derek Carr, his best friend, and back from college when they played together, Derek Carr, and then Davante Adams. He had the big three. He had a young coach. Well, not really a young coach anymore. I always think Josh McDaniels was always young. But obviously a coach that you expected to be there maybe a decade or more, and things will be turning around for the Raiders. The only thing that turned around was the moving trucks, sending these guys in and out of town. Derek Carr is now playing for the Saints. Josh Jacobs is now up in Green Bay playing for the Packers. And Davante Adams finally walked into that front office and said, I think it's time. I need to get out of here. And the Raiders said, you know what? I think you might be right. So now we're taking a look at a player who, according to Diana Rossini, can't wait to get out of there ASAP. In an organization like the Raiders that is basically saying the phone lines are open, we need at least a second-round pick to start the conversation and maybe additional compensation. So that leads us to believe in the NFL who is actually going to be the team that is going to land Davante Adams. Akbar in the chat box said Adam Schefter said the Chiefs aren't pursuing Adams. We'll start there first. Would that be an absolute perfect fit? You know it would be. Do you know why it's actually not going to happen? And no, it's not just sitting back here and saying to yourself, well, I don't think they have enough draft compensation to do that. That's not the case. It's very rare in the NFL that if you believe a player is very good, like Davante Adams is, doesn't appear to be injured, looks like he can still be his dominant self this season. You wouldn't trade him to the Kansas City Chiefs in your own division to have him slap you twice this season and watch the Kansas City Chiefs possibly win their third straight Super Bowl. Divisional opponents technically don't help out divisional opponents. Have there been extenuating circumstances? Yes. The Philadelphia Eagles, about 15 years ago, Donovan McNabb, trading him over to the Washington Commanders. But I think also the Eagles knew they were trying to help him out and not send him to the Raiders, which actually a first-round draft pick was available. So they tried to sort of do him right and send him to a team they thought they could compete, but also knowing in the back of their minds the reason that the Eagles were trading Donovan McNabb because they thought he was cooked. And the Eagles were right. Donovan McNabb was cooked by the time he got to Washington. So there are chances and circumstances where you can trade in division and still make it make sense for your franchise. I don't think this is the case because if we are looking at, Rice going down and you're saying, how long is he going to be out? The longer it takes, the worse it's going to get here for Rice. Now, granted, we thought he would possibly be, Rashee Rice would have that information. Adam Schefter post-game looks like it's going to be an ACL tear. We haven't heard official word just yet, or maybe I missed it. But we anticipate he's not going to play this year. Marquise, Hollywood Brown, you bring in as another deep threat, electric guy. He hurts his shoulder. He doesn't even make it to the season opener. He's out for the year. Xavier Worthy, yes, caught a long touchdown pass against the Chargers. He does have some promise. Absolutely he does. But also at the same time, come on, man, he's a rookie. What are we actually getting out of this? I don't think he's going there. It would fit like a glove, though. Patrick Mahomes and Davante Adams, oh, my God. And Andy Reid designing plays for him. You've got to be kidding me, man. Like, you have got to be kidding me. I don't think he's going there. So let's look at some of the other opportunities for Davante Adams, because granted, he does want to play for a winner. That's why you're leaving, because we don't think, even, hey, on it, 2-2 Raiders, they can make, no, they're not making the playoffs. They're just not that good. They are. So he sees the writing on the wall. And same thing with the Raiders. Why don't we get compensation back before his compensation starts to get crazy over the next 2 years? Now, to trade for Davante Adams, yes, you're going to have to come up with maybe a first-round pick, but at least a second-round pick to get him, which is what the Raiders are stating. But also at that time, he doesn't have any guaranteed money left on his contract. So you know what that means from the new organization, guys, right? Yeah, he's going to want more money. That's also another layer here. So he came out and said, I would like to play with my previous friends, which would be the New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers in New York, and also the New Orleans Saints with Derek Carr and a couple coaches, I believe, maybe a wide receiver coach that he's pretty familiar with. Here's the problem. Next year, the Saints are about $90 million over the cap. Yes, you heard that correctly. $90 million over, not under. So I don't know how you fit a superstar wide receiver with that type of paycheck without cutting half of your roster. So it looks like that's out. How about the New York Jets? How does that even make sense? Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams, Alan Lazard, and you're telling you need more because it's not working out, which then you're probably admitting at this point that Garrett Wilson is a flat-out bust. I don't think he is, but it sounds like the Jets, if they're making a move for Davante Adams, you're telling me Garrett Wilson is a bust without telling me he's a bust. Because you got Mike Williams to be that B wide receiver to go with your A wide receiver in Garrett Wilson. And now you're telling me that's not good enough? Fire the general manager if you need to reach out and get Davante Adams on the Jets just because Aaron Rodgers wants him at this point. Oh, boy. ASAP for him leaving town. Davante, when is that? This weekend? Next Monday? Next Tuesday? Who knows? We'll be right back. It's Moneyline on a Wednesday morning.
Don't look like an idiot at work. Know your stuff. Football and everything else. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. The SportsGrid Radio Network presents This Date in Sports History.
The Yankees are trailing 2-0. That is the key man.
1978, the Yankees and Red Sox have a one-game showdown in Beantown for the AL East title.
Seemed like the whole world stopped to watch that game, so that was the most pressure game I ever played in.
Hit deep to left field. This one may be off the wall, maybe in the screen. Home run for Bucky Dent.
For SportsGrid Radio, I'm Mike DeMurgis.
The Technology Minute with George Capalbo.
Researchers at the University of Waterloo have created a new smart fabric when made into clothing can convert body heat and solar energy into electricity. Super durable with self-powered embedded sensors that monitor air temperature, automatically keeping you warm. Even wilder, monitors your vital signs, including respiration and body temperature. It even detects hazardous pathogens in the air you breathe. There's just one thing you probably don't want to do wearing your electrically charged pants. Shower in them! Follow me at G Capalbo on X and stay tuned to the Technology Minute for more cool stuff like this.
Moneyline. I know Cat's annoying for people. He really is the best shooting big man of all time. Like, Dirk is a better basketball player. But just at shooting three-pointers, Karl Anthony Towns does take the cake. The Knicks 5 of Brunson, Bridges, OG, Hart, and Cat. I mean, that's fantastic. What are we overthinking here?
Catch Moneyline with Donnie Rightside and Kevin Walsh. Weekdays, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 Pacific on the SportsGrid Radio Network. Fall is almost here. It's time to stow the lawnmower and get ready for all that glorious action coming your way. Stay tuned to SportsGrid for all the strategies, angles, and info you need to get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Yes. Pretty soon I'm going to be able to say 844-843-6879. Call in, people. We're hoping. It's the best way to get a hold of the show again. On X, at RightSideVP. You want to get a hold of me, hashtag SG Moneyline, or best now, SportsGrid On Demand on YouTube. Find the channel, hit the subscribe button, get in the chat box. Let's have some fun, and let's play this thing out. Now, hot topics, we just talked about Davante Adams, superstar wide receiver of the Las Vegas Raiders. He wants out. Where can he land? Going over some teams like to say, I want to go to the Saints. Can't go to the Saints. They're way over the cap. I don't even know how that would make some sense. I want to go to the Jets and play with Aaron Rodgers again. Good luck on getting into that locker room and trying to turn it around, because apparently now they're just another wide receiver away after they did have a wide receiver in Garrett Wilson and then went out and signed Mike Williams as another wide receiver on top of Alan Lazard as another wide receiver and Randall Cobb as you get the picture, right? Come on, Jets. Enough is enough. That doesn't make sense. Because if you get Devontae Adams and you pay him a lot of money and Aaron Rodgers, see what I mean? See the rabbit hole we're going down? Teams that make sense here. Could it be the Baltimore Ravens? Hear me out on this. Zay Flowers has been invisible for 2 weeks. They've been crushing football teams. Why? Because their identity is Lamar Jackson passing less than 25 times a game, being efficient, running the football himself, and handing off to Derrick Henry and playing some decent defense. That's the recipe. I don't want to get it twisted because I don't want to go. I understand Devontae Adams is a sensational wide receiver. Don't get it twisted with the Ravens. You go into the playoffs, start passing again, you're going home. You're not making the Super Bowl. So even though theoretically it would make sense for me, just based on player ability and fit on the Baltimore Ravens, I just don't think the scheme is right. I don't want to get into a passing game with Lamar Jackson. He is sensational the less he passes. And I don't mean you have to be, Alex Orji from Michigan. Hey, kid, complete 10 passes for 58 yards and we'll win. He still has to be effective, and he has weapons to do that. But they work off of the running game. It's been sensational. I don't want to mess that up. And one team that I do think is the perfect fit for Devontae Adams, welcome to the Buffalo Bills. Welcome to the Buffalo Bills. Bills Mafia, let's ride. Khalil Shakir looks like a really good slot receiver now. He's banged up a little bit right now. Keon Coleman could be a promising rookie wide receiver. But you bring Devontae Adams in with Josh Allen and a bona fide number one to go along with James Cook in the backfield and those double tight end sets, we're cooking. We're cooking with the Buffalo Bills. I'm telling you right now. Love what I see out of the Buffalo Bills. But Donnie, Sunday night, they got hammered by the Ravens. It happened. The NFL's a week-to-week league. That was a bad spot for them. I told you the Baltimore Ravens were going to win that game, and they did. I also thought they would get over the total. Come on now, Buffalo. Can you at least add an extra field goal in the game? Gosh, tough beat on the overbackers in that one. But that's where he fits. But does Devontae Adams want to go from Vegas, nice heat, low humidity, casinos, nightlife, relaxation, to Buffalo? Maybe, if he wants to win. But I do think if I had one spot to place Devontae Adams, I'm placing him with the Buffalo Bills. And also speaking about the Buffalo Bills, they had big news, which wasn't they acquired Devontae Adams, which I'm hoping he goes there because it'd be a lot of fun to watch. It was Von Miller had an off-the-field issue with, I believe, his pregnant girlfriend. The NFL ran that through, and he comes away with a 4-game suspension. He wasn't living up to the money in Buffalo, but he did get off to a good start this year. 4 games played, 3 sacks. Looks like he was on pace for that double-digit season. Now, he's down 4 games. Now, he's an aging veteran, so you can also say, like, hey, that's going to save his legs for late in the regular season. Or you could say, boy, he was playing really well. Now he's going to lose all that momentum, can't be around the team, and he just comes back and is not the same player we were hoping for 2024. Those things can certainly happen. But that's devastating news for the Buffalo Bills because that's a guy that could rush the passer and get after him, and he was hitting home this year. Now you lost him. Boy, Devontae, I'm telling you, I just think about Devontae on the Buffalo Bills, the sets they can have, the wide receiver combinations that they can use, go off the play action pass. Josh Allen's been nothing short of phenomenal this season so far, second in the MVP race, just behind Patrick Mahomes, and the process that Bills Mafia can get this guy in-house and make a run to a Super Bowl and be legitimate. Like, you lose Stephon Diggs and you make that move. And maybe he wore out his welcome and maybe isn't the same wide receiver that he was obviously on his first couple years in Buffalo and certainly from the Minnesota Vikings. He's performing pretty well down in Houston. You got a young rookie wide receiver in Keon Coleman you were hoping to sort of replace him with in a way. He's been all right. And by the way, was he suspended for the first quarter of that last game we watched in Buffalo? I don't know. But that's what I need to see. Devontae in Buffalo. Let's make it happen. You know what we're going to make happen next? How about this? Major League Baseball. We're going to handicap it. 4 games today. Let's get busy, people. It's Moneyline on a Wednesday morning right here on the SportsGrid Network.
Time to coil up that garden hose. Ball's here. And SportsGrid has you covered with strategies and info on football, baseball, and everything else. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Progressive presents the SportsGrid Sports Flash. Shop Chuck Sanders.
Baseball wild card action on Tuesday. The Tigers beat the Astros 3-1 to go up 1-0 in the best-of-3 wild card round. The Royals shut out the Orioles 1-0. The Mets got by the Brewers 8-4, and the Padres beat the Braves 4-0. Game 2 across the league today. The Astros hosting the Tigers. It's Hunter Brown against Detroit's Tyler Holton. Zach Eflin starts for the Orioles at home against the Royals and Seth Lugo. Frankie Montas gets the nod for the Brewers at home against the Mets and Sean Manaea. Max Fried gets the start for the Braves against Joe Musgrove in San Diego. Atlanta slugger Matt Olson.
I think when people don't think you can do something, that drives you. And sometimes you hear some stuff, and that can absolutely drive you.
Bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
In business, service is everything. Cintas delivers what you need to better serve your customers. Whether it's freshly laundered work apparel for almost any job imaginable, tested and inspected fire protection systems, first aid and safety supplies, on-site AED training, or mops and restroom products, stocked and ready when you need them. Better work days happen together. So visit Cintas.com.
Oh, I'm ready!
And get ready for the workday.
Febreze. Fabric Talk. Hey, it's me, your couch. Today's my favorite day of the week. Febreze Fabric Spray Day. The occasional deep cleans are nice, but in between, I'm needing a refresh. Ooh, here she comes with the Febreze Fabric Spray. Oh yeah, spritz them armrests. Don't be shy. Nothing like a good spray down to get me smelling so fresh and clean. Don't forget my back. Nice. Febreze Fabric Spray. It's just that easy. Now we can both breathe happy. Febreze. La 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 la.
Right before your very eyes, the boys of summer are about to become the champions of fall.
MLB playoffs are coming.
And SportsGrid will bring you all the angles, strategies, and info. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Major League Baseball people, did you know we got 4 more games today in the wild card round? Exciting times all the way through. If we are looking at the pitching matchups, and we're going to start there, right? Let's go over the odds again. 232 start, Detroit and Houston. That's a 178 favorite here for Houston. Holton, the lefty, is going to be on the mound. He's got great numbers, but he's a reliever. And how long he's going to go, that's to be determined. That's why it's so tough to bet sides sometimes in Major League Baseball, particularly in the playoffs. Kansas City and Houston, Seth Lugo, Zach Eflin. That game is a minus 152 price towards Baltimore. Third game on the slate today, that's the Mets and the Brewers. Manaea and Montas, it's roughly a pick 'em, either side. Night game, Atlanta and San Diego. That's a minus 120 favorite here towards San Diego, and that's Fried and Musgrove. Good pitching matchups across the board, but here's how we factor this in. If we are looking at Tyler Holton in game number 1 going up against Hunter Brown, theoretically Hunter Brown is the better pitcher, but numbers-wise, it doesn't say that. But the only reason why numbers-wise it doesn't say it is Tyler Holton is a reliever, guys. Like those fantastic numbers that he has and that we talk about, like let me just bring this up here. He's faced 60 batters over the past 30 days. Got an ISO power number against of 123 and a weighted on base percentage of 183. Absolutely filthy, absolutely sensational. But let's take a look at the games that he has appeared in. How about yesterday? Third of an inning pitched. How about Friday the 27th of September? 1 inning pitched. Wednesday the 25th against Tampa Bay, 1.1 innings pitched. Or inning and a third, I should say. And then back-to-back appearances against the Baltimore Orioles on 9/20 and 9/22. 2 innings pitched and 1 innings pitched. So we're going to get a game where we don't know how long he's going to go, and then the pitching matchups after that. It's a tough way to gauge because, yes, it can work at times, but typically, you didn't throw Skubal 1 inning to start that game because he's a starter, and you knew he would be able to give you depth, and he did that. The question's going to be, is Holton probably just going to be in there for 1 inning, and then you hand it over to have a couple mismatches the same way you were trying yesterday to do with the Atlanta Braves. That's why that game is tough to gauge from a Detroit perspective if you're expecting them to win. But the odds makers are telling you the Houston Astros are a much, much better ball club. So for me in this game, I don't want to say it's a no play or you can't really look at it, maybe an RBI opportunity or 2, but it's just hard to say. I like to know who that starting pitcher is going to be for at least 3 at-bats maybe for my guys. And if I'm going to get 1 at-bat, if that, and then don't know who's actually coming in from behind, I don't know. But Holton, 34 innings pitched over the past 60 days. Guys, his ERA is 1.06. His xFIP is 3.09. It's not something I want to mess with. But again, he's not going to be pitching into the third inning. He just doesn't do that. He's a reliever. He's not going to go any longer than maybe the first inning itself or the first inning, and then if a base runner gets on in the second, that's it. You take a look at Hunter Brown, 54 innings pitched over the past 60 days. A very good ERA, guys, of 2.17 and an xFIP number of 3.24. So if we are looking at a total to this ball game, which does sit at 7.5, it does make sense for the under. But once again, I don't understand how long the starting pitcher is going to go today for the Detroit Tigers. And that is an issue. That's a flat-out issue for me. And I don't want to sort of bet into it. Might be just a viewpoint here. And boy, if Detroit can knock out the Houston Astros in 2 games in Astroland, that would be incredible. All right, let's get to game number 2. Kansas City and Baltimore. That's Seth Lugo on the mound. He's going to take on Zach Eflin. Second highest line of the day. -152 at FanDuel, -155 at DraftKings, -150 at BetMGM. So let's call it -150 in this game. Total that's listed also like game number 1 we were talking about in Detroit-Houston. It is at 7.5. If we're looking from a pitching matchup perspective, to be honest, there's 8 pitchers listed on the card today as expected starters. Pitchers number 7 and pitchers number 8 are going to come from this game. Total 7.5. Now, you might say to yourself, boy, that's the game you got to line up for the over. Keep in mind, yesterday it was a 1-0 game. Reagans was great, so was Corbin Burns. But also in the playoffs, things are different. Bottom 2 pitchers on the card usually equate to an xFIP number of 5 or over. ERAs 5, 6, and 7. Pitching maybe 30, 40, 50 innings and just being horrendous. The past 60 days for Zach Eflin, 49 and a third innings pitched. His ERA, guys, 2.37. xFIP number, manageable, but a little bit high, 3.87. Let's take a look at Seth Lugo, 64 and a third innings pitched over the past 60 days, 3.78 ERA, which is a little bit elevated, and an xFIP that's higher than Eflin's at a 3.95. Not over that 4 barrier, which is usually that trigger point to 4.5s, 4.75s, and 5s or higher. Like, you know, those guys can do a lot of damage. But let's focus on those odds. Do they deserve to be -152? It is a kitchen sink game here for the Baltimore Orioles. They lose, there is no tomorrow. So if we're taking a look at some of those batting props in this game and saying, all right, can we use these 2 pitchers who technically aren't top of the card guys just based on those statistics? Solid pitchers nonetheless, decent ERAs, decent xFIP numbers. You look at Seth Lugo, his last 30 days, pretty good. 0.90 ISO against, 234 weighted on base percentage. If you're looking for the big guns in that Baltimore lineup, Gunnar Henderson, Anthony Santander, and also Colton Cowser. Then you can throw in Cedric Mullins later in that lineup. So you got 4 guys in that Baltimore lineup that have done a lot of damage against right-handed pitching. The question is, how much damage can you do fresh off a game you didn't even score a run? I'm expecting those bats to wake up a little bit, but if there were RBI props to look at, those 4 guys would be. But I got to tell you, I'm not taking them. You know me. I need scenarios that make sense. I need batters that hit well against certain pitchers and pitchers that don't do well against certain batters, right? Lefty-righty splits, that's what we always go into. Now, if we look at Kansas City's perspective here, Zach Eflin is going to be on the mound. Came over from Tampa Bay, now obviously with the Baltimore Orioles. Zach Eflin, as I told you, 2.37 ERA over the past 60 days. That's really good. The lineup today for Kansas City up against right-handed pitching over the past month, not very good, guys. Michael Massey, good numbers. Bobby Witt, good numbers. Kyle Isbell, okay numbers. Everybody else, not that great. Yuli Gurriel in the middle of that lineup has actually had 35 at-bats against right-handed pitching over the past month. Doesn't hit with any power. He's a 100 ISO, but he does have a weighted on base percentage of 366. Not in love with that Kansas City lineup. And also on the other side, not really in love with the Baltimore lineup. So for me, my money, probably passing the buck a little bit in this game as well, which leads us into the next game, which is my favorite of the day. And that's going to be the New York Mets taking on the Milwaukee Brewers. Let's line up the pitchers in this game. Frankie Montas will be on the mound for Milwaukee. Check this out. His analytical numbers, better than his non-analytical numbers. 57 and a third innings pitched over the past 60 days. In ERA, guys, 4.55. xFIP number, though, very manageable at 3.56. If we take a look at the New York Mets, Sean Manaea on the mound. 68 and 2/3 innings pitched. 3.41 ERA, and an xFIP number of 3.59. So a much better ERA than Montas, but a slightly below average xFIP number. But 3.59, still in that good range. That's not anything that you're like, hey, I got to fade that. Absolutely not. Those are solid pitching statistics. But let's get after the matchup here. And I do want to start with what I like the best. Frankie Montas on the mound. His last 30 days, guys, he's actually struggled a bit. Weighted on base percentage, 340 against, ISO power number 281. Both of those elevated, particularly talking about that ISO power number. But let's focus in on left-handed batters against Frankie Montas, the right-handed pitcher. On the season, 344 batters he's faced as lefties. 221 ISO, that's elevated. Weighted on base percentage, 379, that is also elevated. Flip it over now to the last 30 days of how Frankie Montas, the right-handed pitcher, has done against left-handed pitching. ISO power number, 333. That's the danger territory. Weighted on base percentage, 413. That's terrible. So there you go. There's your window. You want to be looking at left-handed batters for the New York Mets today going up against Frankie Montas. There's two left-handed batters that you're going to want to take a look at, and everybody's going to love Francisco Lindor. By the way, this morning, did you know his RBI prop, Francisco Lindor, to record one? That's a plus 180 price. He's got a 306 ISO and a weighted on base percentage of 455 in last month's 54 at-bats against right-handed pitching. Also, Brandon Nimmo, another left-handed batter, 258 ISO through 72 at-bats against right-handed pitching over the past 30 days. Other guys that do have elevated numbers to try to take a look at, Mark Vientos, who we had yesterday to get an RBI, cashed in that ticket. Pete Alonso's got some good numbers. I think the New York Mets might be on their way to the city of brotherly love with a victory today. I do think Montas can be touched up, and I think it's going to be Nimmo and Lindor doing that damage. More Moneyline next, right here on the SportsGrid Network.
Hands up and wave, get a drum or something. I already gave the summer.
Yeah, it's getting cooler.
Football weather is here.
Stay tuned for all the latest odds, strategies, and info. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Progressive presents the SportsGrid Sports Flash. Shop Chuck Sanders.
AP Top 25 college football this week. And new number 1, it's Alabama. The Crimson Tide up 3 spots with a 4-0 record. Next up, a game this weekend at Vanderbilt. 5-0 Texas down 1 spot to number 2. They're on the bye. They return October the 12th at Oklahoma. The Ohio State Buckeyes are 4-0 and stay put at number 3. They take on Iowa this weekend. The Tennessee Volunteers jumped a spot to number 4. They're 4-0 and are on the road to Arkansas Saturday. Georgia down 3 spots this week to number 5. The Bulldogs are 3-1 overall. They're at home against the Auburn Tigers this week. Oregon jumped 2 spots to number 6. They play Friday night. The 4-0 Ducks take on Michigan State. Penn State up 2 spots to number 7. The Nittany Lions are 4-0 and face UCLA at home this week.
Bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
Order for Jennifer C.
Is this my double shot, double cream, double froth, double pump, double hot, double whip, double sleeve?
Yeah. Can you handle that much caffeine?
Hey, did you know Discover automatically doubles all the cash back you've earned at the end of your first year?
Well, I do now.
Seriously, did you know Discover automatically doubles all the cash back you've earned at the end of your first year?
Yeah, you just said that.
Did you say I just said that?
Yeah, I'm cutting you off.
Did you say you're cutting me off?
You earn, we match. Unlimited cashback match. See terms at discover.com/creditcard.
Oh no, stomach issues again?
Stomach issues?
Who are you?
Your pancreas. I could be the real reason for your diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose oily stools.
I thought it was my stomach.
People often do, but any of these symptoms could mean having a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on identifyepi.com and speak with your doctor. That's identifyepi.com. Sponsored by AbbVie.
When the weather cools off, Major League Baseball playoffs heat up. Sit tight. The World Series is coming. Keep it here for every bit of the action with strategies and information to give you the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Let's get to the night slate, people. Went over the first 3 Major League Baseball games today. Wild card action. And again, as a fan, if you're not betting, aren't you rooting just for game number 3s? So you get more baseball on your TV, more in the afternoon. But I'm a Philadelphia Phillies fan, waiting for this weekend, which the Phillies will play, I think, in the 4 o'clock hour on Saturday and also the 4 o'clock hour on Sunday. No Eagles football for me, so I do have a chance to try to settle in and watch those Philadelphia Phillies along with a little red zone action to keep tabs on my wagers. All right, game number 4 tonight of a 4-game card. Atlanta Braves, San Diego Padres. Atlanta got shut down. Michael King was fantastic. 12 strikeouts, unhittable in that game. And it was like the Atlanta Braves didn't even get off the tarmac with their offense and didn't have a chance to do that. Kitchen sink game. They're going to have to throw it against the wall. They are having they do have a decent pitcher on the mound. It's a shame they don't have Chris Sale, because if you could win this game and pitch Chris Sale game 3, or you could have pitched Chris Sale in this game, or yes, you get the point here. The back spasms, which are kind of ridiculous, which I did tweet out right away, they've had to know that he's been hurt for some time and just made up that excuse for a back spasm. Because there's no way he got a back spasm 10 minutes before a baseball game and had to get scratched out of there. You can't get me 1,000 years to believe that actually happened here. No way. So if we look at the Atlanta Braves and the San Diego Padres, minus 120 for Joe Musgrove. Here's the reason why. Last 60 days, Max Fried for the Atlanta Braves, guys, 66 and a third innings pitched. ERA 3.53, which is okay, but his xFIP number, very good, 3.14. You look at Joe Musgrove, 50 and a third innings pitched for the San Diego Padres over the past 2 months. He comes in with a 2.15 ERA and an xFIP of 3.18. So when you're looking at the odds market in this game, there's a reason why it's a minus 120, minus 115 splits here, and a 6.5 total. In this ballpark, it's a true pitcher's ballpark. You are going to get those shadows at the plate around 5:38 as the sun goes down or starts to go down on the West Coast. Be hard to sit back and say, I love the over in this game. It's so low. Because I actually think this game does stay under, to be honest. I do. If you can shop around and if you can find something at a 7 that's out there, you obviously would love that, because then it takes 8 runs to beat you on the under. But if we are factoring in this game itself and say, Max Fried, what have you done for me lately? On the season, 088 ISO power number, weighted on base percentage of 276. That's awesome, through 713 batters. His last 30 days, he's faced 133 batters, an 081 ISO, and a 255 weighted on base percentage, even better than his seasonal numbers. He's been a little bit leaky to left-handed batters through the last 35 that he's faced. But looking at the lineup tonight, Cronenworth, Merrill, and Arise will be the only 3 lefties he faces, which everybody else will be from the right side, which Max Fried has absolutely dominated as a left-handed pitcher, which is kind of crazy. So then if we turn it over and say, all right, Joe Musgrove's on the mound, what does it look like for him over the season itself, which again was injury marred? He only pitched to 395 batters, but on the season, he did struggle a little bit though. 214 ISO and a weighted on base percentage of 270. So if we're taking a look at the last 30 days, 214 ISO and a 347 weighted on base percentage. This numbers got transposed on my screen. Last 30 days, he's actually struggled a little bit with right-handed batters being a right-handed pitcher. A 276 ISO and a weighted on base percentage of 346. Now, how does that line up with that Atlanta lineup, which is interesting too, right? Because if we're taking Travis d'Arnaud out of that lineup, 229 weighted on base percentage against right-handed pitching over the past month, and Orlando Arcia at a 221 weighted on base percentage over his last 79 at-bats over the past month against right-handed pitching, it looks really good. Look at some of these numbers for the Braves batters against right-handed pitchers. 325, 315, 350, 452, 393, 370, 329. Should be manageable tonight. The only problem is, are we just out of gas with the Brewers? Because if we are looking at an under, you better get the Musgrove early. And maybe they can. But I just told you some of those numbers, like a 2.15 ERA and a very good xFIP number. Like these two guys are side by side, 3.14 and 3.18 with their xFIP numbers. But I don't really see the spots to get after Max Fried, even though it's a great lineup for the San Diego Padres. But I told you that Fried is very good against right-handed right-handed batters, being a lefty. Joe Musgrove a little bit leaky on the season and also the last 30 days against right-handed batting. Do we lean towards the Braves tonight? Like that line, like if we're just reading lines, to be honest, doesn't that scream Atlanta Braves? Like based off that performance yesterday, they hammered them, they're down, they're worn out, they're on the West Coast, they got to win tonight, and Max Fried's going to have to go 7 or 8 innings to try to hold it down, to try to save some of that bullpen. And then you look at that price point at some outlets, minus 116, minus 115. It almost doesn't compute at this point. But for my money, probably an overall stay-away game. And just to reiterate, there's 4 games today. Detroit, Houston, Kansas City, Baltimore, New York Mets, Milwaukee Brewers, then Atlanta and San Diego at night. The Milwaukee game, but not from Milwaukee's side, the Mets. Do I think the Mets can win? Yeah, there's a chance the Mets can win. move on and get to Philadelphia and play on Saturday, get themselves a couple days off. But more importantly, again, the left-handed batters, like Francisco Lindor, I expect him to shine. I expect them to do big things tonight, and I expect them to possibly get a victory, but I'm more willing to bet that Lindor and also Nimmo get RBI before I want to actually get after the side itself, per se, in the total. But I think that's the best game to try to attack and certainly win some money on. All right. NFL coming up this weekend, and it's always a quick turnaround. Like, we are invested in Major League Baseball playoffs right now. And maybe you're watching the WNBA, which it looks like the Vegas Aces, who are the champions, now look like they're on their way out. They have to win, I think, 3 games in a row against New York. Now, 2 of those games will be in Vegas, and if they need a game number 5, it'll go back to New York. But if you're watching those playoffs, high leverage situation, betting on a night-to-night basis. But the NFL and college football, it's such because your head is still spinning, right? From Sunday's games into Monday's doubleheader. Tuesday, you're talking about baseball. Wednesday, baseball. And then you realize tomorrow, another week in the NFL starts. And that's Tampa Bay and Atlanta. Not a great feel for that game, but the boys will be live in studio, and we've been very good. I've had some pretty good prop plays over the past couple weeks. I've had some pretty good same-game parlays to try to dig into. You know I'm going to find us something special there. So just hoping FanDuel, that doesn't really give me any boost anymore and kicking me to the curb after how much fun I've been having with them for the past couple weeks. 365 usually hooks me up with good stuff that they do. You know I'm going to share it with people here. So let's just take a quick glance at that NFL card for this weekend. We'll set the table as we get out of here on Moneyline on a Wednesday. Oh, the topics are hot, the fun is flying, and we will be right back.
The boys of summer become the champions of fall. The World Series is on its way, and SportsGrid brings you every angle. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
SportsGrid TV and radio networks are the premier streaming video and audio channels dedicated to serving the sports wagering audience. Found on major smart TV platforms and streaming on SportsGrid Radio and SiriusXM Channel 159. SportsGrid's real-time data, expert commentary, and entertaining analysis transform viewers into informed sports enthusiasts. Our weekday radio lineup begins with the early line at 8 a.m. Eastern with Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside. Donnie joins Kevin Walsh on Moneyline at 11 a.m. Eastern, followed by Football Full Circle at noon Eastern. Kaplan and crew join the party at 1 p.m. Eastern, and Pharrell Coast to Coast keeps things rolling from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. Get in the mix with Kevin Walsh and Game Time Decisions at 6 p.m. Eastern. Evenings simmer with Carver and Lisi, then boils over with Gabe Moritzi on Sports Rage Late Night at 10 p.m. Eastern. To find out where to find SportsGrid that's best for you, go to sportsgrid.com. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Football Full Circle.
The big question Dolphin fans have is, how come there wasn't a backup quarterback? You knew this was a possibility. Joe Flacco only got $4.5 million from Indianapolis. Can you imagine Joe Flacco with these weapons? You think they would be scoring 12 points or 1 touchdown in 10 quarters? I don't think so. So I don't know how they went into the season not having a real backup.
It's Football Full Circle with Ben Stevens and Scott Wetzel. Weekdays noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on the SportsGrid Radio Network.
No way football is played in the fall and winter
because the hits don't hurt as much when you're numb. Get the lowdown on all the sports action coming up right here.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Chat box pumping once again today. SportsGrid on demand. Subscribe. Get in the chat box. Have fun. And by the way, it's not just for Moneyline. Every radio show we do, get in there, man. You can talk to us. You can be a part of the show. And also, as we're waiting for those phone lines to get back, we love to hear from the people. So keep on pumping through on SportsGrid on demand in any way that you're listening and watching. And certainly, if you want to reach out on Twitter/X, you can do the same here. But just looking at the NFL action coming our way this weekend, it is kind of a shame because we do get spoiled a bit to start the season where there's no bye weeks. Every team plays extra amount of games listed in there, double headers on Monday Night Football. It's all great stuff. Now, Thursday, again, we'll start Tampa Bay and Atlanta. We do have our first international game. Now, I told you, the boys are going to be live in studio for Pro Football Today in-game live on Thursday night. We're going to have a great time, hopefully win some more bets, have some fun, bring the information to the people. But we also are going to be live on Sunday morning. You know we do, 10 o'clock to 1 p.m., Pro Football Today, the pregame show. Awesome show, great information, best bets, morning crunch, sell me something segments. A lot of people as guests like Adam Kaplan, Dr. Chow, to give us the information that we need to get you over the hump. But 9:30 a.m., we got a big game. It's a big game. Jets, Vikings, overseas, 2.5-point favorite from Minnesota. Aaron Rodgers and the Jets sitting at 2-2. Do they lose this game and force their way to get Devontae Adams? It used to be, we used to throw the trash games, as I like to say, overseas. Like, Jacksonville's going to win 5 games this year. Put them over there. Not the same anymore. That's a good football game. We'll have that live. We'll be talking about games. We'll have action on that as well. The 1 o'clock slate, which we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So a light 1 o'clock slate compared to what we usually have. Carolina and Chicago. It's a 4-point number across the board for the Bears. You take a look at the Buffalo Bills, Cincinnati Bengals. What a great game that's going to be. Can Cincinnati claw their way out of the grave and get back against the Ravens? After that, Ravens have a tremendous 2-week run here, beating the Dallas Cowboys on the road, hammering the unbeaten Buffalo Bills. Slight favorite, 2.5 points, up from 1.5. I got to tell you, it's still probably trending towards Baltimore, but I think we get points in that game. I do. Joe Burrow's going to have to throw for 1 million yards again. Maybe Jamar Chase finds pay dirt. Love the kid here. No idea why he's playing this year on like a $1 million contract, but he is, and he's performing. T. Higgins, 6 catches, 60 yards last week, working his way back into that wide receiver rotation. Then you have another great game at 1 o'clock, Buffalo and Houston. Josh Allen, C.J. Stroud, Bill's slight favorite here. Awesome stuff. Indianapolis, Jacksonville dead in the water. Indy, we don't know who the quarterback's going to be. Same thing with Miami. On my odds board, it says TBD, but we know that's going to be Snoop Huntley starting this week. What a horrendous football game. Thank goodness that's buried at 1 o'clock. Miami, New England, 35.5 total. How do we even get 3.5 points in that game? I don't know. Cleveland and Washington. Washington's going to face pretty good defense. They face some lame Ds the past 2 weeks. They're going to get a true test. How good is Jaden Daniels? We'll find out again here, but they're favored now. Look ahead line there, -1.5 favorite towards Cleveland. Cleveland gets beat by a bad Raiders team. Washington surprises again, has an unbelievable performance on the West Coast against the Arizona Cardinals. Now they find themselves across the board 3-point favorites, even at BetMGM right now in New Jersey. That number now sits at a 3.5. How good is Washington? How good is Jaden Daniels? Are we buying in yet? Are they the best team in the NFC East? This will go a long way. Even though, as I said, Cleveland's not a good football team, but a much better defense they're going to face this week than they have the previous few weeks here. Vegas, Denver, horrendous game, 35.5. Skip it there. It's a 4-o'clocker. Arizona, San Francisco, there is some intrigue there. 49.5 points. You know will be vested. I told you before the season started. You better be in on every single Arizona Cardinals game because they can't play defense, and they'll probably be able to move the football and score points. Brock Purdy getting healthier back there, not only for himself, but Deebo Samuel. Brandon Ayuk working his way back from that non-off season that he had. George Kittle back. We don't ever think we're getting CMC back, but boy, Jordan Mason has been a revelation in the backfield for San Francisco. They're favored by a touchdown or more at multiple outlets. Green Bay and Los Angeles, before the season, probably thought it would be a better game than it is. Green Bay goes out on the West Coast. Rams still battered. Jordan Love, who was a turnover machine the past week, even though he threw for 300-plus yards and 4 touchdowns. You get the point there, right? I think we probably get points in that game, but Green Bay's offense is the point I want to start making. 425. Man, a 4 o'clock slate stinks, guys. Which, again, is good for me because the Phillies will be on at 4 o'clock. Giants, Seattle, stop. Geno Smith and the boys trying to recover from that Monday night loss. Daniel Jones trying to show he's worth his medal here after having a game against the Dallas Cowboys, which they lost that too. Sunday Night Football, banger, though. Love that. Dallas, Pittsburgh. Monday Night Football, New Orleans, Kansas City. NFL action, yep, starts up tomorrow night. For JP behind the wheels of steel, Donnie Rightside. Thanks for tuning into a solo mission today of Moneyline. We'll be back tomorrow. It's what we do.
Fall is here. It's getting